Senate via special messenger. House Bill 1089. Clerk will read.
Representatives Echeverria, Howard, Setzer, and Pare, House Bill 1089, a bill to be entitled Constitutional Amendment Property Tax Levy Limit, the General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Gentleman from Cabarrus, Representative Echeverria, is recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When Speaker Hall formed the Property Tax Committee and appointed Representative Howard as chair, I knew this would be eye-opening and that North Carolinians would have a real opportunity to reform our 100-year-old property tax system. As the committee worked, something really stood out. There is tax revenue connected to every address in our state. But to me, the most important thing about those addresses is that whether owned or rented, they involve families who need stability and affordability. Over the last decade, thanks to steady conservative leadership, North Carolina has built a strong economy. Businesses want to be here, and people want to live here. Our population and property values have increased. As a result, we have a fantastic real estate market, and unemployment is at 3.8%. That's lower than the national average, and thanks to some of our senior members here, a long way from 2010, when North Carolina's unemployment was almost 11%. Vision and imagination increased. We have gorgeous courthouses and what I like to call beautiful Taj Mahal schools. But you know what else increased? Property tax bills. The increases have not only been high, but some would say extreme. And now the people on whom our strong economy was built need our help. So over the last 5 months, in order to help, we've done a lot of listening. We heard extensively from staff, subject matter experts, and even those who don't want to protect people from enormous tax increases. The discussion was candid, and the conclusion was that we should ask the people if they want a constitutional amendment requiring limits on property tax increases by local governments. This takes us toward a modern, fairer, and more affordable property tax system. So the main question before us today is, should homeowners, renters, and business owners be protected from unfair, unaffordable property tax hikes or not? Shakespeare said in the play Julius Caesar, and I quote, "There is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries." Friends, too many people are distressed, and the tide demands that we help them. If we do, North Carolinians will get the protections and predictability necessary to chart a stable and more prosperous future. If we do not, if we defer in hopes that the people get used to having unaffordable, unpredictable property tax bills, our state will walk into an avoidable crisis and we will be bound in the shallows and in miseries. Our people will be forced into tough decisions and in some cases, even pressured to leave their homes. Let's not be coy. No one gets priced out of the home they own. They get taxed out of the home they own. So when high property taxes cause hardship and pressure people out of their homes, it is the government's fault. Now, you know, I've never raised chickens, but some time ago I helped a friend of mine repair a chicken coop. And off in the distance, it looked like the heads of two beautiful gray foxes looking on and watching us. Now, it's easy to imagine that if the foxes had input, they would have not have advocated for the chickens to be protected. Now, that being said, we have heard from residents across the state. They reached out because their taxes had doubled or even tripled in a short time. They reached out to tell us they had to make difficult changes, sell their homes, or to say they didn't know how much more they could handle. Conversely, we have heard from a few local governments and their associations, entities that get money from the people who need our protection. They sent resolutions stating, and I'm summarizing, they do not support protecting homeowners, renters, and business owners from unaffordable property tax hikes because to be flexible, they must maintain unlimited power to tax our people. You know what was missing from every resolution I read? Not one mentioned the taxpayers or the impact taxes had on them. But I was thinking about the chicken coop. And I realized that the foxes, no matter how beautiful they are, were the reason the chickens needed to be protected in the first place. North Carolina is behind in protecting our people from sharp property tax increases. But we don't have to take all the risk. You see, as a matter of fact, 38 states have meaningful guardrails, with 22 of them already having levy limits in place. Levy limits work. The sky did not fall. Services were not cut. And their residents have protection from unaffordable and unsustainable property tax hikes. Now, these states are not the mark. The mark is whether we are optimal in protecting our people from runaway property tax increases. The data presented to our committee says no. This constitutional amendment is the first step in optimally protecting our people. Now, speaking of our people, let me say, most of our local government officials are great servants, have been responsible stewards of the public purse, and have shouldered the immense burden of local government well. When I've had a chance to speak with them, I asked them to imagine a day when they were not in office, and others who may be less responsible were at the helm. And I say, do you want the people you love and your neighbors to be protected? To their credit, every single one that I asked that question said yes. So no matter how different we see things, I do not intend to diminish any elected official or their opinions. That said, it is hard to imagine, but there is a very small group that opposes efforts to protect homeowners, renters, and business owners. Predictably, they won't say that. They have suggested that we not reform property taxes and that we just do a little something. They accurately stated that property taxes are the most stable source of revenue for local governments, or they deflected and pointed to some other issues. However, when they talked about stable revenue for local governments, they ignored that homeowners and renters also need stability and affordability, and that the bill allows for exceptions, such as a ballot referendum to their people or for emergencies. We can protect taxpayers and preserve local services. A couple more were a little more subtle in their opposition. They suggested that we not reform property taxes, but instead do a little something for seniors to calm things down. They prefer that we not fix this problem and ignore the needs of young and working families who saw their escrows monthly increase by hundreds, the renters who saw their rents go up, and that we miss the rising tide that demands this change. But we should all note there is enormous support for overall reforms to include enhanced protection for seniors and 100% disabled veterans, and to modify the circuit breakers, and that nothing in this bill prevents that. Others were more antagonistic and deflected, saying things like, how could we do this when we still need to pass a budget? Everyone in North Carolina wishes it were not so, but it was brave and necessary for us to get a budget that gives our people a raise and doesn't send North Carolina backward to when one party, I'm not going to tell, but it rhymes with Democrat, was taking almost 8% of people's paychecks and sending teachers home with no paycheck at all, furloughed. Plus, to be frank, members, not having a budget hasn't stopped many from filing bills, hitting the reception circuit, or anything else, so I imagine it's going to be okay for us to protect our neighbors' properties as well. But wait, there's more. Desperation led to accusations. While ignoring the financial hardship that property tax hikes cause, they said, this is political. There are two major parties in our state, friends. If by political they mean that one party wants to tax everyone at every level, create dependency through an ever-expanding government and its programs, and that Republicans want lower taxes and unalienable rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then they can call it political, and I'm okay with that. But I find it humorous because although this is very conservative, there's nothing political about protecting our people from high property taxes. And lastly, I understand that the political dynamics require some to simply be the opposition. Tough spot to be in for some folks. After all, respecting property rights, allowing families to keep more of their money, and protecting our people from unaffordable property taxes are very conservative things. I get it, except I don't. And the reason I don't is because the first government I knew was my family. And they did not always have the money and wherewithal to give me everything I wanted, but they always protected me. It is our duty, members, to put guardrails in place to protect the people of North Carolina. So I humbly ask you to vote yes and allow the people to answer this question. Thank you.